when you listen to what's been called the bathroom audio, before the door can even close, the first thing Bob Durst says is, "There it is, you're caught." Then the door closes. Then you hear all the other things, and then you hear very clearly, "Killed them all, of course." It's people's position that this will be the third confession in this case. The one to Nick Chabon, which we haven't gotten to yet. The one to me when I was interviewing him. And this one.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most credible voice in true crime. The marathon opening statement of the prosecutor, Deputy District Attorney John Lewin, continued for a second day yesterday. It was difficult not to get a sense that Lewin was landing a series of knockout blows that Durst and Degurian would simply never recover from. One of the devastating blows included never-before-seen crime scene images of Durst's neighbors' dismembered remains. Graphic images were presented in court of the torso of Morris Black. You just saw a pale, almost soapy-colored torso with a little bit of dark hair on it, floating in the seawater. You could see the image was taken at night. You couldn't really see the bottom of the image of the torso, but you could certainly see that it was armless and headless. And what was sort of interesting was how pale it was. There was no sign of bruising of blood. It almost was sort of like a marble white sort of color. It was initially shown in the live streaming, but when I went back to see if it was still there, it was edited out or pixelated over. There was also an image shown of a bag filled with Morris Black's limbs, or some of his limbs, and you sort of saw arms together or legs together, and these limbs also, there was no blood because they'd obviously been in the seawater for a long time, and the blood, I guess, had rinsed out of them. But you did see kind of again, the sort of pale flesh, and then on the side of the limbs you sort of saw kind of this rubbery spaghetti, the interior of the limbs where they'd been cut off. Now, of course, these were crime scene images no one had really seen before. Incredibly, Durst disposed of Morris Black in bags filled with the receipts he used to buy them, as well as a newspaper identifying the residential address where Black had lived, an astoundingly daft error by the eldest son of the Durst dynasty. There's something incredibly brazen and almost alien about murderers. You know, they seem to have a confidence, an otherworldly confidence about what they're doing, obviously inspired by evil. But when they do what they're doing, and they seem to be the masterminds of their murderous schemes, and yet they make such crazy mistakes, you sort of get the idea that even in a premeditated crime or even a post-meditated crime, a lot of thought goes into it, but there's also a lot of impulsivity and a lot of thoughtlessness, a lot of reckless action with little thought and certainly little sober thought, little sober evaluation. And I guess, isn't that what murder is? It is someone doing something without really thinking it through for very long. Durst's disposal of Morris Black kind of reminds one of the sort of dumbass thing we'd associate with Chris Watts when he left the bedsheet out in plain sight after going to the trouble to dispose of his daughters in oil tanks and digging a grave for his wife at a remote well site. All that effort kind of under the cover of night and then leaving something out in plain sight, just really ridiculous. But as crazy cases go, the Durst case is certainly one of the weirdest and most gruesome. Durst himself seems to be a combination of feckless and enterprising. The murder of Morris Black, Durst's neighbor, is a prime example. While Durst showed some skill with his surgical amputation of his neighbor's limbs, cutting him up at the joints like a chicken, he stupidly tossed the severed limbs in black garbage bags in Galveston Bay, and he simply washed back ashore almost immediately. When Durst was interviewed about it, he said, well, the limbs felt heavy, so he thought they would sink. Not the sort of thing you'd expect from a university-educated heir to billionaires. And that wasn't the weirdest part of all. All this was against a background of a marijuana-smoking dropout dressed in drag, pretending to be a mute woman. Durst is a fascinating character, fascinatingly disturbing as both the architect of what may be multiple murders. These are what we know about. There may even be crimes that we don't know about. And then he's also the developer of his own demise. Durst hasn't been caught, and those are the words he used in the bathroom audio, but he's been caught because of his own loose lips kind of thing. My own impression of Durst is that he's kind of snarky, and it's his reckless snarkiness, which is arguably the reason he is who he is in the first place, is why he is here, where he is, and having to account right now for his sins. John Lewin at one point describes Durst describing how he cut up Morris Black's cadaver and instantly referring to the man as an object, a thing, an it. And after Lewin's statement, I think it'll be difficult for the jury not to feel the same way about the repulsive reptilian creature blinking black-eyed in front of them. Durst's rich, rollicking roller coaster ride feels like it's over at long last, doesn't it? But let's not be premature. The defense will have to present their opening statements. That's next.